All right, guys, happy Monday. Sorry we are running a few minutes late. There are so many pieces when you're doing these series that you just want to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's. So sometimes we take a couple of extra minutes to get everything going. But as always, I promise you it will be well worth the wait. And I am so excited to bring forth this series. I've already explained to you why it's so special to me, mainly because the Me Too movement, I believe, has become an evil manifestation. And I have 3 sons. So let's jump right into it. Welcome to Episode 1 of Harvey Speaks. All right, guys, so where should we begin? I'm thinking that we should begin with the theater kid archetype, okay? Because if there's one thing that I've realized throughout my career in politics and in the media, it's that there is this theater kid archetype that exists. It's real. People who dedicate a large portion of their lives to the pursuit of the camera, wanting to make it in Hollywood, wanting to make it as an actor or an actress. Maybe you start as a drama kid. I'm not sure, I'm not certain, and I will take your opinions on this, that thirst ever dies within them. And of course, I'm generalizing here, but I find that when I come across these people, now that we're older, they seem to forever be on a quest in the back of their minds for their big break. Like it could still happen, even if they're in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s. And so the question then becomes, what happens to these individuals when it never arrives? Okay, I want you to think about that. What happens if there's a woman who spends a decade or even more of her life trying to make it in Hollywood, only to realize that she's failed? Maybe she was even that girl who, before she left her hometown, quietly mocked in the back of her mind the unambitious other women, right? The girls from her hometown who married off at the age of 20 and then they immediately started having families. Maybe in her youth, she mocked them because, she knew that she had something special. She was going to make it. She was leaving her hometown. And I think about that because, interestingly enough, in my first book, I wrote an entire chapter about a friend that I used to have who was exactly that sort of an individual. And I spoke about her because she was an aspiring actress in Brooklyn, and we met interning and just kind of chose different paths in our life. I was kind of just wanting to get myself out of student loan debt, willing to take any and every job. And she was just sort of this free spirit. She described herself as a free spirit, and she came from another country, and it was all about attending the right parties, meeting the right directors. She was just so much cooler than me, She was so much cooler than me and more confident than me, and she was gorgeous. She was prettier than me. And for a while, it seemed to be working for her. She, men fell at her feet. She got these small acting gigs that she wanted. And then as we grew older, and obviously in Hollywood, older is even when you're young, she stopped getting those small roles. And I sensed in her a bitterness at the different decisions that I had made in my life. And unfortunately, our friendship ended. But I'll never forget that one of our last conversations that we had was actually about the Me Too movement. And she was so invested in it. She was like, you don't understand, like this has to happen. And I had wondered, even though I was listening to her, whether or not her investment in the Me Too movement was actually her trying to reconcile decisions that she had made in her past, decisions that she had made with producers and people that she thought that, well, if she slept with, they might lead to her getting her big break. Anyways, that's all somewhat anecdotal. It's real, but anecdotal. And the reason that we're here today is because we're speaking about Harvey Weinstein. Because we all remember nothing and everything about this case. It is very strange. There was so much information that we couldn't dilute it at that time. We for sure remember that it began with an explosion of journalists, and then way too many women to count that were making allegations. Here is just a small snippet.
The similarities between these stories were uncanny. A lot of use of showers, a lot of exposing himself, and as I said, in 3 of these cases, allegations of rape.
And then he comes back out and he's fully naked.
And he just kept asking me to watch him masturbate.
On everything. I'm a famous guy.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Please come in now. 5 minutes. Don't ruin your friendship with me for 5 minutes.
This sort of behavior is normalized and accepted for decades in this industry.
Decades, she said. And it was, of course, then this very big watershed moment that was going to bring down Harvey Weinstein. Goodness, you guys, he was arguably the most powerful man in Hollywood. And now we had upwards of 100 women who were claiming that they had been sexually abused, harassed, or even raped, which is why he's in prison today. But I got to tell you something right away. That list, that long list of women who found the cameras and spoke out and said that things happened, and you don't really remember whether or not he denied it, that list significantly dwindled by the time we got into the courtroom. And then even when we were in the courtroom, it dwindled even more. And I'll tell you why. This is one of the very many compelling aspects of this case. How they were able to sort through the women who were just outright lying, meaning women who had definitively never even slept with Harvey Weinstein, some women who he alleges he never even met, from the women who had at the very least been intimate with him, okay? And I'll tell you why, because of course, when people realize that someone's going down, if were a struggling person who wanted to make a quick buck and you knew that this empire was going to crash, you might be willing to come in for a quick payday. And what better way to do that? You could just cry and then describe something terrible that happened. Your Honor, he made me fondle his testicles, tears streaming down your face. And these sorts of moments happened, and Harvey's lawyers would give each other a look, a knowing smirk, a high five, realizing that, no one's going to believe this woman. And I'll tell you why. The answer to that is because Harvey Weinstein didn't have any testicles. He doesn't have any testicles. I told you guys, this is a strange tale with many twists and turns, and this is just one of them. But what became a crucial element of the Harvey Weinstein case, something that Harvey probably had considered a curse when it happened to him back in 1999, wound up being something of a blessing to his very many court proceedings. I want you to check out this headline, okay? It reads, Harvey Weinstein's abnormal testicles are key focus of final arguments in trial. I am not kidding. This is real. And I'll tell you, the story goes that back in 1999, Harvey Weinstein was diagnosed with something known as Fournier's gangrene. Okay, it is extremely rare, but a life-threatening infection that impacts the genitals with a rapid tissue destruction. Essentially, what we're talking about is necrosis, right? It's necrosis. The tissues are dying, and I can show you this excerpt from a Variety article. It says, during the trial, prosecutors revealed to the jury that Weinstein underwent surgery in 1999 for Fournier's gangrene, which required doctors to remove some of his scrotum. That surgery caused pretty noticeable scarring because of an infection. His testicles were actually taken from his scrotum and put into his inner thighs. So his testicles were removed and put into his inner thighs in 1999. I know, you're thinking, Candace, are you making this up? How could this be? Yes, that happened. So the list of credible allegations had significantly dwindled, okay? And like I told you, really, this came down in New York to 2 women. As we told you, Harvey Weinstein was sentenced in 2020 to 23 years total in New York, but 20 of those years for criminal sexual assault in the first degree stemmed from accusations that were made from a production assistant who worked on Project Runway. Her name is Miriam, otherwise known as Mimi Haleyi. Okay. So 20 years, fellas. 20 years, ladies listening. You got sons, we've got husbands, we've got brothers. It's got to be horrific, right? If we're throwing the book and we're saying, basically, die in prison, because that's what that means. You should die in prison, Harvey Weinstein. What she lived through must have been terrible. I'll tell you right off the bat that Mimi Haleyi was born in Helsinki in 1977, and she grew up in Sweden. So she was not an American citizen. That little tidbit will become somewhat relevant in a little bit. And the way that she was introduced to the public was through a lot of tears. It was a press conference in 2017. She announced her allegations against Harvey Weinstein next to none other than Gloria Allred. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's hard to listen to her recapping what Harvey put her through. So let's take a listen to Mimi.
It was not long, though, before he was all over me making sexual advances. I told him no, 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 but he insisted. And then I said, I'm on my period. There is no way this is going to happen. Please stop. He wouldn't take no for an answer and backed me into a room which was not lit but looked like a kid's bedroom with kids' drawings on the walls. He held me down on the bed. I tried to get away, or tried to get him off of me, and kept asking him to stop, but it was impossible. He was extremely persistent and physically overpowering.
So you heard her here. She said, no, no, no. He was overpowering. This is how this happened to her. And by the way, Gloria Allred, I gotta give it to that woman. She has really perfected the craft of ambulance chasing, right? Using press conferences to persuade the masses with a lot of sobbing, right? And it doesn't really matter at that point whether or not what she says in the press conference is going to be the same thing that she says in the courtroom, because people are paying attention to the press conference and probably not going to follow this into the courtroom. And I got to tell you that as detailed as that press conference seems, Mimi does in fact leave out some important details, and she also edits some details when she gets on the stand, which we will get to. But the important thing to know is that Harvey was indicted by a grand jury in 2018, and Mimi's testimony was therefore taken sometime before then. But by the time that she hit the stand, she, in 2020, had edited that testimony a little bit. Even from the grand jury indictment to the stand, there were some things that had changed. She had included some epithets, which we'll get into. So first, we should just get into how she and Harvey met. This is all according to Mimi. This is her story. She first met Harvey Weinstein back in 2004. And then she approached him 2 years later in 2006 at the Cannes Film Festival because she was looking for work in the industry after her mentor, quote unquote mentor, famed London producer Michael White, had suffered a stroke and lost his business. So that's her. You can see her looking young and beautiful. And there she is with Michael White, a producer in London who she said became her mentor. Now, it's worth mentioning that by mentor, she means that after she met him once and they exchanged numbers, she visited him and decided to stay with him during that visit in London. And you can see she looks young. He looks quite old. Yeah, she was in her 20s. He was in her 60s. She told this, by the way, to Vanity Fair, that he then became a father figure to her and that they enjoyed a quote unquote unconventional platonic relationship. Okay, that's how she spent her 20s beside that guy, Michael, brushing shoulders because he was a big producer with Kate Moss, the Rolling Stones, Princess Diana, at her father figure's house. And then she went on to become his personal assistant. Like I said, he then had a stroke, okay? Her father figure, boss, man, had a stroke. And so with Michael White no longer able to provide that kind of support, she decided to perhaps look for another father figure. I'm not sure how to contextualize that, but she approached Harvey Weinstein at the Cannes Film Festival in 2006. Now, I want to be clear that in 2006, Mimi would have been just about to turn 30 years old, okay? In other words, she was not a Hollywood spring chicken. I think that's really important. You've seen throughout this podcast, I've always tried to stress what a woman's age is because it's important to differentiate between someone who's, 17 years old, someone who's 15 years old, someone who is 30 years old, a fully formed adult woman, because it changes the context, or it makes you, I guess, think about how helpless and unsure and uncertain they were. And Mimi was about to turn 30. That's where the story begins with Harvey Weinstein. She was not in her early 20s anymore. So her story goes that Harvey invited her after she approached him to meet him at his company's hotel in Cannes, the Majestic Hotel. And right away, it was a horrible experience, okay? She was humiliated because she got to his hotel room and they have a little bit of conversation. And then he does this really crazy thing. He asks her for a massage. And she's confused because she's thinking she's coming up here to talk about potentially getting a job, talking about career aspects. And she instead offers to call downstairs to get him a massage. And then he turns it around and he says that he instead wants to give her a massage. And she's humiliated. Like I said, she testified that she was so humiliated that when she left that hotel room, she broke down crying. Yeah, that's not what she was expecting when she went into this guy's hotel room, which is why what happens next gets interesting. Now, her memory's super fuzzy on how exactly it happened, but she then gets a temporary job on Project Runway, which was at that time being produced by the Weinstein Company. And to be clear, they had already been filming this series. They were deep into production, and reminding you again that she is not an American citizen. So he hooks her up with this job. Again, who knows? She doesn't know. Did I speak to his assistant? I don't know why. I don't remember any of this. And she begins working as a production assistant on the show for several weeks. And she's paid in cash because her visa did not allow her to work in the United States. Shooting then wraps. And by the way, while she's living in New York, while she moved to New York for this opportunity, she's living with a friend of hers in the East Village. And after shooting wraps, she reaches out to Harvey to thank him for the opportunity. So despite this really uncomfortable, humiliating experience in his hotel room, she gets this job, then she just wants to thank him for the opportunity. And he invites her for a drink at the Mercer Hotel in New York City. And she describes that experience as very pleasant. She met him on June 26th, 2026, in the lobby of the Mercer Hotel. And she testified that he was, quote, very respectful, even charming. He offered at that time to have her return to Project Runway the following season. And the next day, on the 27th, she's going to his office to see somebody else. And she then also stops by his office, and he gives her a book that she should read. And then he offers to give her a ride home to her apartment after that meeting at his offices. And he also says to her, like, you should come on my private jet. We can go to Paris the next week. We can attend this fashion show. You can stay with me. You can stay at the Ritz. And she says that she declines that offer. They get out of the car. His assistant, by the way, male assistant, is also in the car. He's like, oh, this is where you live? This is the building that you live in the East Village? She's like, yeah. I guess Harvey was just paying attention to the layout or something. At least that's what you're left when you get through the transcripts. That's kind of the impression that you get, that Harvey was kind of just monitoring and really wanted to know where this young woman lived. She said that she didn't want to go to Paris, but she says that he didn't take no for an answer. And she testified that she had no intention of doing so, but in an effort to be polite, she said to him that she would let him know, maybe I will go to Paris. And that Weinstein called her repeatedly. And then later on, he comes back. He shows up at her apartment for the second time that day. And now we're going to jump right into this court transcript. I can only imagine. This is one of the most powerful men in the world. And he's going to this East Village apartment. So the question that she gets asked on the stand is, did you act in any way romantically interested in Harvey Weinstein? She says no. Did you act in any way sexually interested in Harvey Weinstein? No. Did you hear from Harvey Weinstein once he left your apartment and you went inside? Yes. At that point, was your roommate Liz at home? She was not. Was Peanut there? Peanut is Liz's dog. I believe so. Describe the additional contact. Well, I heard from him and his assistant a few times that day, asking if I had decided whether or not I was going to go to Paris. And I said, thank you so much, but no, I am not going to come. He said, well, just think about it. Again, and he kept calling and I kept saying, thank you so much, but no. And question, those initial communications that you were describing, were those phone calls? Answer, I believe they were phone calls. Yes. Question, and that was to that phone number that you had in your planner and that you were using at that time when you were in New York. She answers, I believe so. I'm not 100% sure that they were phone calls, but it's more like they were phone calls than emails. Question, can you describe Harvey Weinstein's tone during those conversations of those phone calls? She answers, well, he was persistent and persistent. And what, if anything, happened sort of following those repeated phone calls? Well, then later he showed up unannounced at the apartment building. And I am not sure if he rang the intercom or whether he called me on the phone and said he was outside, but he had shown up there unexpectedly. Question, did you try to get him to leave via phone initially? I did. He wanted to come inside and I said it wasn't a good time. And so he said, just talk to me like 5 minutes. I want to see you for 5 minutes or something like that. Question. And so after you had said that it wasn't a good time, did he remain outside of your building? Yes, he wouldn't leave. And can you describe his tone at that point? It was just very persistent and insistent. And what did you do? Well, I didn't want him to come into the apartment, so I thought I will go out and see him outside, just like outside by the door. So I left the doors open to go outside to open the front door. And as soon as I opened it, he just pulled it apart like that and barged past me and walked down the hallway and said, "Where is it? Where is it?" And he was pointing and he saw, obviously, the door was open and he just walked into the apartment. Let me just come out of this transcript for a second. So Harvey Weinstein reappeared at her apartment and she doesn't kind of maybe sort of remember the phone call-ish. The phone call details are always a bit hazy when you go through this transcript. But she knows that she only went outside because she didn't want him to come inside. But she's given a narrative. He's crazy. He's like, where is it? Where is it? I want to see your East Village apartment, and just bursts past her and barges in and somehow finds exactly which apartment it was because the door was open and he just took a guess. That is power, my friends. Anyways, jumping back into this, the lawyer asks, and what did you do? I mean, I was just standing there like I didn't know what to do. So I just like, oh God, oh no, why is he walking into the apartment? Describe what happened. Did you go into the apartment? Did you follow him into the apartment? Yes. And describe what happened once you were inside of the apartment. Well, once we were inside of the apartment, we were just standing there and he was basically standing there. He asked a few things about the apartment and who I was living with. And then he was persisting with trying to convince me to go with him on this trip to Paris. I mean, he must have really wanted her to go on the trip to Paris. Question, do you remember anything about the details of what he was saying at that point? Answer, well, at one point he said, okay, well, why don't you just take your roommate if that will make you come? She can come too. She can be your chaperone or whatever. What was your responses to his request? Well, I was still trying. I was just saying, thank you so much, but no thank you. Basically, I'm not going to come. Can you describe his demeanor in the apartment as he is making these repeated requests? He was just very overwhelming and he was just very, very persistent. And he was still friendly, but it was almost beggy. And he was kind of very insistent and would not just accept the no. Did you continue to hold your ground and say that you were not going to go with him? Yes. Was he listening? And then there's an objection here from Harvey's attorney. So he rephrases the question. Was he continuing to ask you to go? Yes. At some point, did he stop asking you to go? Yes. Can you describe that? Well, at one point because I just didn't know how to shut it down, so to speak, I just said something that I have, I was trying to say things. And I said, you have a terrible reputation with women, I have heard. And it was more like half a joke or something. I was trying to be friendly still, but he got offended by that. And he stepped back and he said, what do you mean? What have you heard? That sort of thing. And I said, no, I'm just saying like, no, just in general, like whatever. But that's when he backed off. At that point, did he leave your apartment? Yes. And I'm going to show you that I have marked as People's Exhibits 65 through 69. Do you recognize the People's Exhibit 65 through 69? I do. What do you recognize those to be? So this is the front door of the apartment building where I lived during that time. So I wanted to just describe to you that incident because it's important to understand. So she starts with this hotel incident and then in Cannes, and now we've moved and she's, gets a ride. And I guess he's just decided to memorize her little East Village apartment, and he's barged in, luckily found the apartment because he could tell from this door that must be hers. And he walked in there and she follows. And then despite this beast and monster chasing her, she's able to get him to back off with just this one sentence. Oh, you have a bad reputation with women. Her memory then gets a little bit fuzzy, I got to tell you. She doesn't remember, again, exactly how they communicated, but she acknowledges that she accepts an invitation for Weinstein to fly her out to California, Los Angeles, for the premiere of Clerks 2, a movie in July of 2006. She frames that as like, I felt bad I didn't go to Paris, but she's going to go to LA because also the timing works out for her because her friend just had a baby. But then something happens, okay? Before Mimi flies out to LA on July 10th, 2006, Harvey invites her to his Soho apartment. And that's what you heard her crying about. He forcibly performs a sexual act on her. Now, even if you knew nothing about this case, just this sentence alone that I'm about to show you from 2020 when the trial was going on, AB News article that was covering the trial would probably make you go, huh? It reads, quote, one of the two women that Harvey Weinstein is on trial for sexually assaulting took the witness stand on Monday to describe how the Hollywood producer violently and sexually assaulted her and to explain why she returned to him within a month and endured a second unwanted sexual encounter. Wait, okay. So she's taking the stand to explain why after a violent sexual forcible assault, she then went back to him within a month to endure a second assault. That doesn't sound right. But yeah, Mimi's allegations were that on July 10th, 2006, Harvey Weinstein forcibly performed a sex act on her. Then she went to LA on his dime, by the way. And when she returned on July 26th, 2006, so we're talking 2 weeks, it happened again. Mimi alleges that when she returned from LA to New York City, about 2 weeks later, Harvey invited her to the Tribeca Grand Hotel for a drink, and she agreed. She said, quote, he was very persistent and insistent. She explained her going back by saying, quote, I was still trying to make sense of what had happened, why it had happened, and I felt very trapped in not being able to do anything about it. She said she felt like she was trying to regain some sort of power until she walked in to meet him on July 26th, 2006, wearing a battered pair of vintage shoes with little money and no family in the U.S., by the way. So she testified, quote, I just felt like some sort of hobo, just like a girl who's just down on her luck. You know what I mean? Yeah, park aside the fact that we're talking about a grown adult woman. She was down on her luck, and she really was just kind of going there to regain power. But she testified that when she arrived at the Tribeca Grand Hotel, she was directed to Weinstein's room, where, and I call me crazy. I maybe wouldn't have gone to his hotel room again, but like this is a different. It's different. She's going again to regain power, and this is where she claims that he took her hand and he pulled her toward a bed, and she says at that moment, quote, I just went numb, because she realized right then that Weinstein had trapped her again. She testified, quote, I just felt like an idiot. In the courtroom, this is the moment where she trembles and she weeps and she puts her hands in her head. Because if you're thinking about asking questions about that or wondering if there's an aspect of common sense here, maybe don't go back to a hotel room, don't let him into your apartment, anything like that. The point is now she's crying on the stand. And crying counts for a lot on the stand. You're going to learn that a lot throughout this case. Now, I want to take you through when Harvey's lawyer is able to question her, because it gets quite interesting. And if you go back to that original encounter at the Cannes Film Festival, he asks her, and this is the top of 1638, Skylar. He asks her, remember, this is when he's supposed to be the massage incident, that initial one. He's realizing I have some questions, even though she's crying. And Damon Chernis is his name, is the lawyer. And he says, that assistant brings you up to the room? And she says, correct. And then he says, do you remember what you did earlier that day on the 24th at the Cannes Film Festival? Do you remember where you went? I don't. When you get to the Hotel Majestic, you get brought to Mr. Weinstein's room, right? Yes. The two of you, according to your testimony, have a brief conversation about whatever. Yes. At some point, you say Mr. Weinstein asks you about massages. Yes. He asked if you'll give him a massage, or at some point if he can give you a massage, right? Correct. At this point, you told the members of the jury that you were very upset, to say the least, right? I was offended, yes. You were offended because this was a business meeting that you thought you were going to potentially talk about Project Runway. No, not Project Runway at this point. Something else? I went there to meet him to ask if he had anything, any production work that I could help on. Yes. During the course of that meeting, is it your testimony Mr. Weinstein propositioned you with a massage, right? Repeat. Propositioned you with a massage? He did, yes. And you were humiliated is the word you used. I was. You left the room. You testified. You started crying. Once I left the hotel. And when did Mr. Weinstein give you his phone number during the course of that? I don't recall when he actually gave it to me. Somebody's phone number is usually the last thing that you get, right? Objection, says her lawyer. Probably, she says. The court says overruled. Was it after Mr. Weinstein had made these propositions and you were walking out the door that he gave you his phone number? Objection, Mr. Haas says. The court overrules that objection. She answers, possibly, probably. Then you said at some point later you received a call from Mr. Weinstein, but you don't really remember it. I don't really remember if it was from Mr. Weinstein himself or an assistant, but somebody came through to arrange for me to go help out on Project Runway. Mr. Weinstein gave you his number? Yes, I may have followed up with his office. So we are clear, you called Mr. Weinstein's office after this massage request? Yes. And when you called Mr. Weinstein's office, who did you talk to? Actually, I'm not sure, but yes. Were you thinking in your head at this time this massage incident occurred, why am I going to call this guy for a job? No, I needed a job. And isn't it true that Project Runway was already in production at that point? Correct. And being in the production industry, you are aware it was probably fully staffed by the time that you would have gotten involved, correct? And she answers, yes. Well, it's interesting testimony there. Yeah, she needed a job and kind of has to admit, like, yeah, maybe she got his number on the way out of that horrible massage incident in which she cried. And then maybe she reached out to his office about that position, which wasn't really an open position, but required someone with power to kind of make the position for a person who isn't supposed to be working in the U.S. just kind of happen. I don't know. I'm not alleging anything, okay? But the point is I'm just reading you the testimonies that are going on, and then Damish Chernus is able to question her again. Of course, he questions her throughout this entire thing, but about that incident on July 26th, when she just can't explain how she got trapped again by him at another hotel. And here is from that transcript. Chernus asks her, on the 26th of July, you had sex with Harvey Weinstein, correct? There was sex with Harvey Weinstein, yes, she replied. Shortly after, Chernus asked her, he didn't force you to have sex, did he? I didn't physically resist, she replied. Do you remember testifying before the grand jury that the sex was not forced? Correct, because I didn't resist, Haleyi said. He also then challenges her, according to this article, her recollection on the stand, where she now says that he called her a bitch and that he called her a whore. And that was something that she had not recounted in her initial interviews with prosecutors. She found that to be very strange. Like, when you're in front of that grand jury in early 2018, you never said any of this stuff. And here's how she replied. She said, quote, I think that is something that I remembered later, she said. Okay, let's just take her at her face value here. Listen, I'm not here to not believe women. Let's take everything she said into account because, again, Harvey gets 20 years, okay? And I hate being a person with common sense, so I'm happy for you guys to comment. Let me know what you think. I would expect that after having survived 2 sexual assaults, after having survived with 1 powerful sentence, you have a bad reputation with women, having survived him having barged into her apartment, plus the weird massage incident in the room that began it all, I would surmise that Mimi Haleyi, now done with that in the past, Project Runway situation over, that she would have maybe just stayed away from Harvey Weinstein altogether. Is that fair? I'll look in the chat. Is that fair? Is it fair to go, okay, maybe just stay away from this guy. He's bad news bears. Like, if you're not going to go to the cops, you're too scared, fine, but just stay away from him. And if you think that is fair, or if you think it's not fair, I invite you to tell me why it isn't. I can tell you the answer. She didn't stay away from him. She didn't stay away from him after her various sexual assaults in 2006. You're going to be rather surprised to learn that she instead would send Harvey Weinstein emails. He conducts his emails always through his assistants, and she sent Harvey Weinstein this email 2 years after her double assault. This email went out on Friday, June 27th, 2008. She wrote, "Hi, Harvey. How are you? It's great to see you in Cannes. I noticed an article in today's New York Post about the Addams Family being turned into a Broadway musical. Just to remind you what a genius I am, didn't I tell you that was a great idea like 3 years ago at the Mercer Bar? Lots of love, Miriam." Oh, lots of love. I was not expecting to read lots of love. Now, I want to be honest. I've never been raped. I've never been sexually assaulted. But I would imagine in a world where that happened to me, I probably wouldn't send an email and say lots of love to the person that had conducted those sexual assaults. That's just me. Again, I could be in a totally crazy space. Happy to hear you guys come, explain to me why that sometimes happens and so specific. And she's kind of going back to the Mercer Bar. She says they had that great time together. That was just right before he scoped out her apartment, barged in, and she doesn't seem to be concerned about that. And to be clear, Harvey replied to her 3 days later. Sounds like a busy guy. Maybe he wasn't giving her the attention that she needed or wanted. And he replied on the 30th, and he said this to her: "Miriam, you are a genius. It's good to hear from you. All my best, Harvey." Ooh, just one sentence back, which he just must have been so pompous and so arrogant. Like, he didn't even allocate the proper amount of time to wanting to have this relationship or wanting her to like him. Because if he had committed these insane assaults, I don't know. I would imagine that he would want to, make sure that she was happy. But that's a pretty short response. Anyways, she then writes him again. Yeah. A year after that, she writes him on February 25th of 2009. This time, she's a bit more explicit in what she's looking for. She writes, "Dear Harvey, I haven't seen you in so long. How are you? Listen, I'm saving up to become a Kundalini yoga teacher, and I just wanted to announce myself available for work if you happen to, by any chance, have anything shooting in London. I'll be a runner, whatever. I'd really appreciate any leads. My cat needs feeding. Either way, I hope you are super well. Peace and love, Miriam." Okay, so I don't know if I'm just not aware of what can happen or why you might email a person who has multiple times assaulted you and again try to put yourself into a circumstance where you are working for him, but that is what Miriam did. And now we are talking, she is 3 years older, so she's about 32, 33 years old. And I would say, obviously, probably had every opportunity at that moment to go to the police and to report what had happened to her. But she doesn't do that. She doesn't do that at all. She waits another, so this is 2009. She comes out with her allegations in 2017. She waits another 8 years. When she's next to Gloria Allred and Harvey Weinstein is going down, and she decides to present this story as her having been sexually assaulted. And she was successful. Like I said, she broke down crying on the stand, and that was enough in New York to give him 20 years. Now, when we take a look at the transcript and we start hearing and looking at more information about that time that he barged into her apartment, when Damon Chernus is able to put her on the stand and ask her questions about that setup of the apartment. And you learn that there was not just one door in which she had to buzz him into, and he burst through it. There was also a second security door that you would have to be buzzed into. And she is not really sure how he doesn't really remember the details of how he got past that one. But he did. And then we learned that the layout of that apartment actually required him to go right and then left in order to get to her open door. And I am telling you, when I'm reading through this transcript, I'm thinking, if a girl did not want you to come to her apartment, to be inside of her apartment, you've got 2 security doors, you got a call to get it. I mean, I just maybe would have let the call go unanswered, maybe. Not opened the second door, not showed him. Well, I'm not implying she did. Obviously, her testimony is he just said, "Where is it? Where is it?" And then, found it. Just was able to find it. Just like had a scent about where her apartment might be. But I felt like there were maybe some opportunities for her to get out of that situation when I was reading through the transcript. And then I found it to be very weird. And again, this is another one of her memory lapses. When Damon Chernus, the lawyer, starts asking her about this trip to LA that she says she got invited to because of a movie premiere. Then we learn that she was in LA for 2 weeks and that Harvey paid for that trip. And then Damon kind of says, "Hey, how long do movie premieres usually last?" And she says, I'm paraphrasing here, "1 night." And so you were there for 2 weeks and Harvey paid for this trip. Yeah, she doesn't remember how that happened after he barged into her apartment, but recalls maybe that and then Damon shows her an email, another email that she sent to the Weinstein Company, where she says, "Hey, yeah, Harvey said that he would help me get to Los Angeles." And then Damon Chernus, Harvey's lawyer, is able to show in her calendar entry that on June 26th, actually, she had gone out to buy her friend who had a baby in LA a gift. So before this movie premiere offer, which she alleges was the reason for her going to LA, she had plans to go to LA. So that, I guess, was serendipitous. Or, as Damon kind of presents, he was just paying for her to go to LA. And this wasn't really about a movie premiere. This was about Harvey Weinstein. Again, this is reading the transcripts. My takeaway is that they kind of maybe had just offered to pay for her to go to LA on a trip. And he didn't really need her at the movie premiere at all. But what do I know? Again, I don't want to make any implications here because he was found guilty, guys. And there's so much more that I'm going to tell you about Mimi, this woman who kind of enjoyed these father-like relationships, these mentor-like relationships. And truly, guys, she just felt like a hobo. And it's really sad that this 30-year-old woman just couldn't, I guess didn't have enough life experience to know about these pitfalls of men and their hotel rooms and robes. And even when the signs were there and he asked for a massage and, those parts get really hazy. And so the New York courts said that she was a victim. And what's really compelling, by the way, is when you hear all of these people pretending to be outraged that the appellate court said, "What happened here?" And one of the things that one of the judges says, and we'll get to that transcript tomorrow, or in our next installment of this, when they're reviewing this case, is they go, "Why were certain people even allowed to testify?" Because it almost looked to this judge, this appellate judge, that they didn't have the evidence really to convict Harvey. So they just kind of allowed this sort of banana court thing to happen where they let people testify about all sorts of things, like Bob Weinstein, his brother. Harvey once got into a fight with his brother. Okay, why is this being allowed in this courtroom? What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything happening? So if you get into a fist fight with your brother, or you punch your brother, it means that you're a rapist? What is, it was all about just like character assassination, Oh, Harvey one time, didn't pay me or something. And it's just like assassinating his character. It seemed like a show trial. Like I said, I'll show you what the appellate judge said about this and why they are sending this back down. But I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine you or someone you love. Maybe it's your woman watching, your husband, your brother, your son gets 20 years in prison. 20 years in prison for this relationship that of Mimi Haleyi, also now goes by Mimi Haleyi. And nobody really cares to look into this and to recognize that there's some strange things that I think went down here. Anyways, we're going to stop there for today. And I'm going to also show you one other thing and talk about just Me Too in general. But first, I want to throw to some of our sponsors who have been amazing, GoldCo being one of them. Over the last month, we have truly seen how much wasteful spending the last administration was doing. While the Fed has been working to rein in inflation, the broader economy is still feeling the effects, particularly in everyday items like food, housing, and healthcare. If you've been worried about your savings or retirement, it's time to take a look at diversifying your savings with GoldCo. Gold has been recognized as a store of wealth for thousands of years. Unlike other assets, its value is not tied to the performance of any particular company or government, making it less susceptible to the volatility of the financial markets. GoldCo has made buying metals very simple. They're a huge supporter of the show, and they are good at what they do. So right now, you can get a free 2025 gold and silver kit jam-packed with great information about buying precious metals. You could also qualify for up to a 10% instant match in bonus silver. It is a great deal, especially right now. So go to CandiceLikesGold.com to learn more. Again, that's CandiceLikesGold.com. Also, Field of Greens is another sponsor of this show because the government has spent years forcing mandates and dictating how we manage our health. Now they're pushing back when we try to take control of it ourselves. And that's why you need to reclaim your own health with Field of Greens. We all know eating healthy is key to staying healthy, but life gets busy and sticking to a perfect diet is not always realistic. Field of Greens makes all of that super easy. It's whole fruits and vegetables. That's it. We could all use more of that in our diets. Just one drink and you have a healthy head start on the day. My team loves taking Field of Greens and have gone on and on about having more energy and better gut health and overall just feeling healthier. Every fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens is doctor selected for specific health benefits, and Field of Greens promises at your next checkup that your doctor will notice your improved health or you'll get your money back. So right now, my viewers will get a 20% discount to get started if you go to fieldofgreens.com and use code Candice. That's fieldofgreens.com, code Candice. Can't wait to see what you guys are thinking about just what I presented you so far. Tip of the iceberg, guys. Tip of the iceberg. Okay, we're just getting started here, so don't even get crazy. It's just, and it's amazing to think, by the way, I know we had showed you before when we cut a trailer for this, but all of these celebrities, he's God, he's God, he's God. And then instantly, right? Instantly, and this is a matter of self-preservation, those very same people like Jennifer Lawrence, who said he was a God and thank you, I owe you so much, turned on him and were a part of the dog pile. Take a listen.
He is just that horrible ass boil that does not go away.
Harvey Weinstein isn't here tonight. But don't worry, he'll be back in 20 years when he becomes the first person ever booed during the In Memoriam.
The Academy, as you're no doubt aware, took action last year to expel Harvey Weinstein from their ranks. There were a lot of great nominees, but Harvey deserved it the most.
Incredible. With friends like these who all took. Who needs enemies, right? And that's kind of the thing about the Me Too movement, is how it moves. When people are certain that people are going down, they are willing to say so much. And then when someone starts going back and through the facts, I think people get a little bit nervous. I think there's going to be a lot of celebs that are nervous. They know I'm talking to Harvey. They know I know stuff. They know I'm getting close. They're freaking out. What do I know about these people? Okay. And similarly, we saw this, by the way, to go into a current event with the Blake Lively thing. Oh, it was so easy for the cast members to throw, oh my God, just throw Justin Baldoni under the bus. And I don't mean to correlate Justin to Harvey, but it was amazing because Justin was just so kind and did nothing wrong. And they all were like, self-preservation. La, 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 Brendan Sklenar, read the complaint. Well, guess what? I just wanted to very quickly let you guys know Brendan Sklenar has had a change of heart because he is avoiding saying that he's Team Blake like the absolute plague now. And so last night there were the Oscars last night. I didn't watch them, but I did catch that on the red carpet of the Vanity Fair Oscars party, someone came up to him and just flat out asked him if he was Team Blake, you know, and here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
And finally, I know you're very supportive over your female co-stars as well. Blake Lively, how are you hoping to support her during this time?
I mean, I just, it's a tough situation, and I just hope everyone remembers what the movie's about and why we made it in the first place. And it's about love, and it's about supporting women in general and helping people through tough times. And that movie's helped so many people. And I just want people to remember like what it's about and why we made it, and to kind of keep it on that kind of like core ethos. You know what I mean?
Blah, 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 blah. Say a bunch of words and also say absolutely nothing. I get it. Brandon, so much easier. Just say sorry. So much easier. But you will note, by the way, that was the Hollywood Reporter. Okay, the Hollywood Reporter is the one that is like unbelievably Team Blake and Team Ryan. Ari Emanuel's got power at the Hollywood Reporter. So they set him up for that, trying to get him to say something great about Blake Lively. And that failed, and he just kind of backed out and just mumbled his way out of that one. That's kind of amazing. Also, a quick update. There is a legal filing today in the Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively Me Too case, the first ever to be a Me Too case that I would say was orchestrated by a man, Ryan Reynolds. That is my take on that situation. But the court is going to post an audio-only access for the press and the public to have access to an upcoming hearing regarding their protective order. I am so there. I will be covering it. Do not worry about it. I will be there. And now we're going to get into some of your comments. But first, I just want to thank American Financing and tell you all about them, because I know everyone is working so hard to support themselves and their families. And sometimes it seems as though you're just taking a step back every month instead of moving forward, because the bills are higher than what you bring in every month. You have to swipe that credit card to cover the difference, and the debt seems to just keep adding up. But if you own a home, my friends at American Financing can help you break free from that cycle. American Financing is saving people just like you an average of $800 a month. Think about what you could do with an extra $800 every month and not having to worry about those minimum monthly payments. And even better, it costs nothing to find out how much you could be saving. All it takes is a very quick phone call to American Financing. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. So call American Financing today. Start your journey towards being credit card debt free. Call 800-795-1210. Again, that's 800-795-1210. Or you can simply visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. That's americanfinancing.net/Owens. Okay, let me see what you guys are saying very quickly. All righty, who do we have? Jandy writes, I actually caught it live. You're amazing. Always keeping you and your family in my thoughts and prayers. Sneaking from work really quick just to donate and say that. Jandy, thank you so much. That is so kind of you. Mila says, I have worked in the industry for 15 years and have seen many women throw themselves onto the casting couch for that leading role. They are not innocent. Oh, shocking. Do you think that's what happened with Mimi? No, what? Maybe you need to go back and watch her cry some more. Mia writes, love everything you expose. Kamala's not black. Brigitte is a man. Blake and Ryan are fake and everything is gay. Thank you. Alice writes, Candace is fab. Zadeh writes, congrats on 4 million subs. Candace, well deserved. God bless you and always keep your faith. This person anonymously writes, as a woman who has been abducted and raped, you would never, and I mean never, reach out to that person, let alone reach out like this year after year, time and time again. You know what? I'm so happy you said that, because I didn't want to then end up with a bunch of rape victims being like, no, that's just like, that's protocol. That's what you do. You send emails, you try to see them, you try to be alone with them again in hotel rooms. I mean, I'm just from the school of hard knocks. I use a little bit of common sense, but I had that instinct that maybe people who have lived through rape, which is, by the way, a huge reason that I do this series. And what I hate about the Me Too movement is it completely cheapens the word rape. So people that survive an abduction and a real rape and real sexual assaults have to contend with a movement of women who perhaps are engaging in something consciously. Perhaps. I'm not here to paint a picture about Mimi. She won. Don't want to get in trouble, but I'm just reading you the facts of his case, and it's going to get even crazier, you guys. By the way, before we jump off, I wanted to let you know that we released an episode of Shot in the Dark for free, because right now there's all of this talk about measles. And I was getting flooded with emails from parents saying, Candace, where is this episode? Because they're basically using another fear-mongering campaign to force parents into acquiescing to their children getting a combination shot, measles, mumps, and rubella. And so we thought it was too important to keep it behind the paywall. We released episode 14 of A Shot in the Dark early and for free, available at CandaceOwens.com. So if you're a parent and you're listening to all of this measles rhetoric, that will help you get a base understanding of even the history of measles and mumps and rubella in this country. And hopefully it will cause you to not be as concerned about this rhetoric, which will keep happening as more people wake up to what big pharma is. And while you're there, obviously sign up for the book club. You can buy our book, Make Him a Sandwich, which is available for pre-sale. Support us in our independent journalistic endeavor, and in any way that you can. We deeply appreciate it so that we can keep doing what we love to do. And we'll see you tomorrow.